The political science work, for instance, on like collective decision making would tell you that, yeah, as group size increases, harder to reach collective decisions. So right, there is that component of it. And however, I think if you look back, a lot of the same sort of issues, partisan obstruction, for instance, or just general legislative obstruction, like that's not new. But we have pretty clear evidence of this happening well back into the 19th century. It's maybe taken a slightly different form over time, but the sort of core of problem, I think, has still always been there, regardless of the size of the chamber. I will say that one of the sort of interesting historical quirks about the Senate is, so part of why the Senate finds itself where it is today is in the early 19th century, they got rid of what's known as the previous question. Now, it wasn't quite used for how it's used today, right? So now today, and especially in the House, it's sort of one of the ways that we can sort of end debate on an issue, move on to whatever matter was before us. Well, the Senate gets rid of it in the early 19th century because they're so small. And they say, well, we don't really need it. Now, at that time, it was used differently. So it wasn't really, it took time before the House sort of developed it into that tool to cut off debate. But it was a sort of function of, well, we're a small chamber. We don't really have these sorts of problems. But again, flash forward another 200 years, and all of a sudden, removing that rule in 1806, has had really profound consequences for the trajectory of the Senate. And the one thing I will say as well is, if you sort of look back at sort of the general debate about how should we construct the Senate, how should we construct the House, there's a whole host of factors that come into that. But one of the concerns was, we don't want the Senate to become too large. You do want to keep it as a smaller body, which is how you end up with 2 senators instead of some larger number. So I think there was some sort of recognition that you wanted a body that was hopefully more deliberative, but maybe those plans, those sort of hopes meant the reality of once it got time to govern, people sort of still exploited the rules in the same sort of ways that they do today. And again, the House has had its own sort of experiences with this. In conclusion, we say it's more a matter of sort of degree than of the sort of general form. What we're seeing today is somewhat of a historical outlier. It's not like there's no analogy, but it is sort of a problem that has been there well before the House, or so the Senate, reached its current size.